Hey Fit Fathers, this is your official invitation to come to our first ever conference called Fit Father, Fit Mother Live. Join us in August 2025 for 3 transformational days designed to help you overcome one of life's greatest obstacles, staying consistent and motivated with your health amidst the challenges of life. At Fit Father, Fit Mother Live, we're bringing together world-class health experts to help you become more focused, more disciplined, and take your results to the next level. Day 1 of the event focuses on mindset and mental health, because as you know, real change starts in your mind. We'll give you strategies to reduce stress and unlock greater discipline, motivation, and mental clarity. Day 2 focuses on physical health and longevity. You'll hear from top doctors and experts on the latest methods to speed up your fat loss, build muscle, enhance your longevity, and overcome obstacles like nagging injuries. Day 3 is all about the power of community and accountability. You'll make real connections with like-minded fit fathers and fit mothers who will become your friends and support you long after this event ends. We'll also have dozens of top-tier health companies on-site as vendors, showcasing the latest products, technologies, and innovations to support your health journey. This is so much more than just a conference. This event is your chance to connect with your fellow fit family, to recharge your batteries on an unbelievable wellness vacation, and take your fitness results to the next level. Don't miss out on the best fitness event of 2025. Register now at fitfatherproject.com/2025 to secure your spot today.
Most people are aware that hydrogen in water exists. They don't know what it does for them or really what it is, but they've heard about it. By 2034, we're going to hit our second critical mass in that the general public will know it's good for them. And it's going to be ubiquitous, like a vitamin C or a creatine or something that is absolutely everywhere.
Today's guest is Alex Tarnava, the inventor of the patented and clinically validated open cup hydrogen water tablets. In today's episode, we discuss how you can dissolve hydrogen tablets into your morning water to enhance your energy, extend lifespan, improve exercise performance, and control inflammation.
Research is showing that a pretty significant amount of middle-aged and older metabolically impaired individuals either cannot produce hydrogen gas or they produce more methane than they produce hydrogen. This is of critical importance because as methane rises, all-cause mortality increases, basically every disease outcome increases in prevalence. We also know that as we age, methane tends to rise and hydrogen tends to drop. But in centenarians that we've studied, these people who are over 100 years old have higher breath hydrogen than the average young person. Right? So their lifestyle has kept their ability to keep producing hydrogen gas.
Hey friends, welcome to today's episode. I wanted to record this specific introduction for this episode because there are some scientific terms and understanding that I want to lay down for you that's going to really help you get a lot out of this conversation. As I mentioned before, I am joined by Alex Tarnava, who is the inventor of these hydrogen tablets that you can basically pop in water and they dissolve hydrogen gas into your water. And when you drink that, you get a lot of health benefits. You're going to hear in this conversation there are benefits related to inflammation, antioxidant capacity, improving exercise performance, improving cognitive health, regulating hunger hormones. And basically what's happening here is if you remember back to your high school chemistry class on the periodic table, there is hydrogen, which is element number 1. It's the smallest element on the periodic table. It is the most abundant element in the entire universe. And it turns out that when we get hydrogen into our bodies, that there's a lot of health effects that happen in all organ systems. This is why there's such wide-ranging effects. And over this past year, I've been playing around with molecular hydrogen, dissolving these tablets in my morning water. And now I'm having a conversation with the guy who actually invented these. And the company of the tablets we like is called Drink HRW. They produce these really great hydrogen tablets. And the basic concept here is that when you put these in your morning water and you chug it very quickly, you're giving your body a high dose of molecular hydrogen, which works in different ways than standard supplements. It's a little more foundational than that. And when you get this into your routine, your health can certainly enhance. And I'll say this, if you're at a point in your health and fitness journey where you've done a lot of optimization your nutrition's on point, your exercise is on point, you're regulating your stress, and you're looking for something to take your performance to the next level, then molecular hydrogen is a biohack that I absolutely approve of. It's something I've been using for the last year, and I'm really excited now to bring this to our community as part of our conversations and the things we look into to enhance our lifespan. Enjoy today's conversation. Ready to unlock the ultimate recovery secret? Meet Desert Plunge, the premier cold plunge designed to take your recovery, energy, and mental resilience to the next level. Cold plunging is more than just a trend. It's a game changer for reducing inflammation, improving circulation, boosting your mood, and even accelerating fat loss. And with Desert Plunge, you get a premium cold plunge setup that's durable, easy to use, and built to last even in the harshest conditions. I have a Desert Plunge that I use every single day, and I absolutely love it. And here's the best part. As a listener of this podcast, you can save big. Use code FITFAMILY at checkout to get an exclusive discount. Whether you're a busy professional, a parent looking for stress relief, or just someone who wants to feel better every day, Desert Plunge makes it easy to add cold therapy to your routine. Visit desertplunge.com now and start your cold plunge journey today. That's desertplunge.com, code FITFAMILY for your exclusive deal. All right, Alex, welcome officially to the Fit Father podcast. We are so happy to have you here and to have a very illuminating discussion about molecular hydrogen.
Yeah, happy to be here.
It's super cool, and I do feel grateful to be here with the founder and the creator of these molecular hydrogen tablets, something that I have been using in my health journey over this last year. And I think there's a lot of people listening to this. This may be the first time they've ever heard about molecular hydrogen. So I think it's prudent to talk about the backstory of hydrogen, why you created this, and basically how it works in the body and how it might be different from other types of supplements or products that people might take.
Absolutely. So which should we start on first? Should I tell my story? Should I tell the story of hydrogen from the beginning of evolution?
Let's tell the story of hydrogen. I think that feels right.
Sure. So hydrogen has been with us since the very beginning of evolution, since our last universal common ancestor. So the single-celled organism that spawned all life on this planet actually consumed hydrogen as its fuel source. Now, a few steps later, the eukaryotes that became our first mitochondria, well, they formed in a symbiotic relationship between two organelles, one which expelled hydrogen as a waste product, right? So it's been with us for a couple steps before mitochondria. Now, we have brought in a lot of these bacteria into our system throughout all of evolution that both consume hydrogen and produce hydrogen gas. Mm-hmm. So it's played a critical role at every step of the way. Getting into more recent times, human evolution. Now, the way humans have evolved to produce hydrogen gas is by fermenting fiber, right? So we have bacteria in our system that ferments fiber. It produces H2, which elevates our circulating levels in our cells and our blood, and our tissues. Now, the big issue here is throughout the majority of human evolution, we were consuming 100 to 150 grams of dietary fiber a day.
Right.
Now, the average person on a standard American diet is getting 1 to 3 grams or 0 grams of fiber a day. So even the average person, including raw food vegans and people eating tons of fruits and veg, are only getting 10 to 15 grams, and people max out, at 40, 50, 60 grams of dietary fiber a day. And this is for a number of reasons. I mean, first off, we have stripped fiber from most of our food sources, right, through horticulture, right? And we've done this to make our foods easier to eat, right? Because fiber is very difficult to eat. Think about eating, say a certain celery stick that's extra fibrous and it's stuck in your teeth and you're gnawing and you can't break it apart. That was all of our food throughout human evolution. So what happens to any living thing when you're not giving it its food, its fuel? It dies, right? So not only are we getting a small percentage of the hydrogen gas that we evolved to anticipate, but we are killing off the bacteria. So even if we try and improve our health, that bacteria might be gone and we might not produce any hydrogen after that. So research is showing that a pretty significant amount of middle-aged and older metabolically impaired individuals either cannot produce hydrogen gas when given something like lactulose, or they produce more methane than they produce hydrogen because methane producing bacteria has taken over. Now, this is of critical importance because we have a few pieces of correlative knowledge. One, we know that as methane rises, all-cause mortality increases. Basically, every disease outcome increases in prevalence. We also know that as we age, methane tends to rise and hydrogen tends to drop. But in centenarians that we've studied, such as from Okinawa, these people who are over 100 years old have higher breath hydrogen than the average young person. Right? So their lifestyle has kept their ability to keep producing hydrogen gas.
That's fascinating. Is there a particular kind of gut bacteria species that tends to produce hydrogen as its postbiotic byproduct?
Yes, but I don't have the I don't remember them. I'm actually really bad with bacteria. So
Okay. No, but it's cool.
Yeah.
I think it's cool, and I'd love to state it in my own words to make sure everyone's kind of following the story here. Hydrogen, if we were back in high school chemistry, element number one on the periodic table, like foundational, most abundant, element on the entire planet. And hydrogen gas is two of those hydrogens stuck together. And we produce hydrogen gas naturally when we eat fiber, although that has changed from our modern unhealthy lifestyles, stuff that kills the gut bacteria, not enough fiber generally. And it seems, for many reasons that we'll talk about in this conversation, that having high hydrogen gas levels in the body, or at least getting a steady dose of it, is correlated with longevity. And the stuff that's not hydrogen that's produced, like methane, which is a carbon bound to three hydrogens, might be just like a putrefactive byproduct that's not good for our health. Is that fair?
Yeah, okay. Absolutely. And I'd be happy to, after the call, send you some of the publications, on the hydrogen producing bacteria. Because I've never really studied bacteria, it's a new area of interest. It's like reading a foreign language. Even if I memorize each bacteria today, in 3 months, because I haven't looked at it again, it's all out of my head.
Well, I bet it's fair to say that the gut bacteria that we know that are good for human health, let's just say like the lactobacillus, family, or the bifidobacterium, I wouldn't be surprised if the ones that we know are most correlated with longevity are also the ones that produce hydrogen. That's not like a statement of fact, but I bet that's going to be the case. Okay, so we have hydrogen. We can make it from gut bacteria. How did you, as someone interested in health and fitness, get into hydrogen when there's so many things you could have been studying? Like, where did you stumble upon this is like actually a big deal for health and we should be getting this into our bodies?
So out of absolute necessity. So about 10 years ago, I was the healthiest I'd been in my life. I was the fittest I'd been in my life. I had a business that gave me a lot of freedom. I'd travel about a week a month, and the 3 weeks I was at home, I'd work an hour a day. So I was training as if I was a pro athlete, even though I was just having fun. I was 29 at the time. So I was exercising about 4 to 6 hours a day between CrossFit and various martial arts, and then hiking and doing everything I wanted to do. And was just plugging along. Everything was good. And then something happened. My GP at the time thought it was a mystery virus. Many have commented it could have been mold toxicity as well. But something happened that triggered an autoimmune response in me. So my roommate at the time also got really sick. It hit him differently. He had pneumonia, had to go to the hospital a couple times. But and he was a super fit guy, triathlete, Spartan race competitor, stuff like that. But with me, my C-reactive proteins went up to 34 milligrams a liter, so about 100 times abnormal. I had chronic fatigue. I was sleeping 16, even 18 hours a day. I had sudden onset narcolepsy. So if I sat down for a minute or two at a time, I'd just conk out, which is how the hours kept stacking up. And I had central nervous system fatigue. So basically, I had absolutely no explosive energy or reactive energy. So, for instance, at the time, I could do roughly 20 unbroken bar muscle ups. Once this happened, I couldn't do a single chest bar, right? Or I went from a 54-inch plyometric box jump to I couldn't get my feet off the ground, right? But my strength was not affected. like my bench press was fine, my deadlift was fine, my squat was fine. So it was only these reactive movements that were just completely shut down. And the GP I was working with at the time, he just kept taking my blood a few times a week, trying to figure it out. And after a couple of months of this going on, it just slowly started going down. And I went down to like 2 to 3 milligrams a liter on my C-reactive proteins, which is still high, like what you'd expect if you have the flu or something like that. But when it dropped like that and the central nervous system fatigue went away, the narcolepsy went away, the extreme fatigue went away, I was left with polyarthritis. So I had osteoarthritis in 11 joints, the worst of which is my left shoulder, which now has no cartilage left. So the high inflammation had just ravaged basically every joint that I'd put stress on in my lifetime of sports or had injuries in. They were ruined. And the GP that I was going to at the time, he put me on 1,000 milligrams of naproxen a day. So that's like, for listeners, think Aleve, but like super Aleve, like 5 times a dose you do over the counter, and cortisone injections. And I went on my merry way, but I knew this was not a forever solution. At 29 years old, I can't just be taking 1,000 milligrams of naproxen and steroid injections for the rest of my life. So all the time I'd spent exercising, I put into just scouring PubMed, reading any article I could find on anything that was reducing inflammation, affecting, regulating the inflammatory response. And I incorporated quite a number of what we now call biohacks. I was doing cold exposure, I was doing sauna, got tons of supplements, was going for, treatments at various, alternative like practitioners. And I started reading about molecular hydrogen and hydrogen water. So I realized that some people I knew were selling these machines that were purporting to make hydrogen. And I bought one for like $5,000 and just went on my merry way. Well, about 9 months after that, I fainted a few times in the gym. So what had happened, I developed multiple ulcers and I wasn't processing my nutrients, right? So I had to abruptly stop the naproxen. And within a few days, all my joints seized. Couldn't put on, a jacket, couldn't put on socks without lying down. So I came to the realization that the naproxen and the injections were the only things that were keeping my inflammation down. And none of these biohacks were working, at least not well enough for what was going on. So I went back to the drawing board, went back to PubMed, was desperate, just scouring. And I found more studies on molecular hydrogen and hydrogen water. And at first they pissed me off because I had this $5,000 machine that wasn't working. But then it just clicked and dawned on me, well, how do I know my machine is making hydrogen? And what's the right dose of hydrogen to see a physiological effect? So I started buying the full papers to read the materials and method, and quickly realized that none of the clinical trials were using a machine like what I'd bought. Like in every single one at that time, 9 years ago, the researchers were making it in their own lab, either from bubbling gas, under pressure, or by using magnesium. And getting reactions typically under pressure as well. So this gave me a bit of hope, and I went about trying to make my own hydrogen water. So first I found magnesium rods, but then I had a second thought. I tried it for a couple of days, and I'm like, I'm not controlling how much magnesium I'm ingesting, right? And I don't have a lab to test. So I didn't want hypermagnesia. So then I'm like thinking I need to control the amount of magnesium I'm getting in. And I went about trying to find, and by the way, this is not like a magnesium supplement to magnesium salt. This is the element, the metal magnesium, right? So I started trying to find magnesium powders. And all the sources in the US couldn't send to me because I'm in Canada. So I realized that because of the various uses of magnesium metal, it's tightly controlled by the U.S. government. You have to go through background checks through the State Department, all this fun stuff, which I wasn't going to do for, a hobby project, for my health. But I did find sources in China and Eastern Europe that came in that set off alarm bells because they would be labeled like silver paint powder and things like that. I quickly realized that they weren't legally allowed to send them either. But I started playing around, and the first thing I realized was the powder floats, right? So all the hydrogen's going to off gas out.
Yep.
So I realized I had to compress it to get it to sink. So I started making tablets, and I was drinking a few liters a day, 3 or 4 liters a day, and I was getting like 3 parts per million at the time. And I forgot to mention, I tested that $5,000 machine. I found a reagent to test for hydrogen gas, and it was undetectable. Right, I had to triple the input to get a single drop to reduce. It was 0.03 parts per million. Right, so I was getting about 3 parts per million. At this time, so about 100 times higher concentration than this expensive machine. And after a week or two, all of my joints started loosening up, and I started feeling great. And I'm like, holy crap, like this is miraculous what's going on. But then I had a sober second thought, and I thought to myself, I understand the chemistry well enough to get this reaction to work, but I'm not a chemist, right? And I'm dealing with hydrogen gas, and I'm dealing with metal magnesium. It's the white and fireworks. It burns at over 5,600 degrees, Fahrenheit. I don't want to blow my house up with myself in it, right? Yeah. And, this reaction from a high school level, like high school chemistry, is pretty straightforward, but there could be any number of side reactions going on. I don't want to poison myself either. And I need to get this magnesium tested, because what if there's contaminants? What if there's heavy metals? So I started thinking about all of these issues and sent the magnesium out to get tested. It was a bit high in heavy metals, like not like dangerous, concerning, but like high for long-term use. The magnesium we now use is a pharmaceutical grade that they use in implants inside your body that react away, and there's almost no heavy metals in. Like we are a fraction of what California Prop 65, sets the limit at, which is the strictest, regulations in the world. So I found my founding partner. He's a PhD chemist, right? Like an organics chemist, synthetic chemist. He designs molecules for pharmaceutical companies, for different disease targets. And I told him what I was doing. And at first he said, save your money, right? This is the worst pseudoscience I've ever heard in my life. He gave me all these reasons and said, hydrogen is inert in the body. It has no physiological effect. And even if it did, you'd want to inhale it. You wouldn't want to drink it. So by that time, I'd read every single paper that had been published on molecular hydrogen. There was only a few hundred at the time. And I was able to rebut everything he said with peer-reviewed evidence. Even with the inhalation, and I know we can get into this a bit more later, but in certain tissues, drinking it in water will elevate those tissues better than inhaling, even at hundreds of times the gas dosage. So the pharmacokinetics are kind of interesting. But he read them, and he said, well, I'm shocked, right? But it looks like there is some science here. I still don't believe it, but sure, I'll take a look at what you're doing, right? Because it looks like it's at least a legitimate project. And so some time went by, like a couple weeks. He hadn't gotten around to it. I was just sending him a new paper every day. He was tinkering a bit and looking at what I'd done. And serendipitously, I sent him a clinical trial on a certain disease model. And it was unbeknownst to me at the time, but he was actually the lead chemist developing small molecules for this disease at the time at his pharmaceutical company. And he called me and asked if I wanted to meet for lunch. And he basically said, with all of the other papers I'd sent, he just had to kind of read the results and conclusions and look at the methods to see if they were controlled properly and trust the researchers. But on this paper, he was a subject matter expert. And he joked that he wished his molecules worked this well, and that unless the paper was fraudulent, this stuff works, right? And he said, are you sure you just want to do this like for yourself, right? Or do you want to look into commercializing this? So I thought about it and I thought, let's at least progress and see if this is possible. So it only took a few weeks for him to refine my formulation, and we got a tablet that was working perfectly in a mortar and pestle. We quickly realized that there is a massive difference from making 10 or 20 tablets at a time, hand mixed in a mortar and pestle and hand pressed, and making millions at high speed.
Yeah.
For getting it to still work, to get it homogeneous, and also to reduce the risk of explosions and anything happening dealing with, the elemental magnesium. So to get our first production ready tablet from that point was roughly a year. It was 3,000 iterative adjustments to our formulation, and our process. And it was 15 failed scale-up attempts. Right. And I kind of quarterbacked that one. He didn't have the bandwidth. Obviously, he was working like 80 hours a week for his pharmaceutical company. He was just kind of advising as we went. And I just had to dive deep. I read every single patent I could find on making tablets and, lubrication and binding. I read every, research article I could find on this area of science. I hired other consultants. And I just kind of quarterbacked everything to try and put the pieces together from each area of science on what each expert was saying. And we finally got there. Now, the next phase, because now I had a product that I could turn into a business. But the second challenge is I have always been quite skeptical of the supplement industry, right? And I didn't want to just go in and sell something that I had no real good evidence it was working, right? Now, at the start, I was thinking, okay, well, I'm getting a higher concentration and dosage than these other technologies that they're doing research on. So that can justify this, but I really need to demonstrate that my product is actually doing something and helping people. So I emailed every first and every corresponding author on every single clinical and preclinical trial, like rodent study on hydrogen at the time. Again, there was only a few hundred at this point, offering free product, free placebo, assistance in funding, right, to give them free reign to publish no matter if it works or it doesn't. I strongly believed in that, and I think science is ruined, by these gag orders on publication when it doesn't turn out the way a company wants it. And I got a couple bites. A couple of researchers are like, sure, we're always looking for hydrogen products. We'll test it. And now, since then, and this is, I guess, 8 years ago, in the last 8 years, we now have at least, we stopped counting at 5,000 more iterative adjustments to our formulation to get to where it is now at the over 12 parts per million and 500 milliliters. We have 18 published clinical trials. We have, I think it's 5 case studies, 6 preclinical studies. We have 3 more clinical trials that are either under peer review in press or under manuscript prep. And I think it's 5 or 6 mouse studies that we have that are currently under manuscript prep or under peer review. So, and we have more research actually currently underway than we have published. So we've really piled on.
It's a really powerful journey. I love is an interesting word here because you were in so much pain and suffering, but it makes a lot of sense why that motivated you so much to study this and to get that passionate about it. And it's amazing how life serves us up challenges that can ultimately be turned into passions and ways to serve. Now, for someone who is interested in exploring the benefits of hydrogen, what's a high level of the benefits that someone would get from consuming molecular hydrogen at the concentration that the HRW tablets can produce?
So there's a few mechanisms in how hydrogen works. And this is what makes it really interesting, because we've identified, 4 different ways. So in vitro, hydrogen does have a very weak but direct antioxidant response, specifically for the hydroxyl radical and peroxynitrite, which are the 2 most damaging. So this is critical because we don't want to eliminate the good guys. H2O2, nitric oxide. These have very important critical signaling roles. So H2, again, in vitro, has shown to selectively reduce hydroxyl and peroxynitrite. It isn't happening that much in human studies and in rodent studies, but the higher the dosage goes, the more it happens, right? Because more hydrogen molecules are getting into your system and having a chance to do this. But this is actually increased by the fact that hydrogen is actually regulating our antioxidant response, the redox status within our cell. So hydrogen acting as a mitohormetic effector. So this is hormesis of the mitochondria or exercise of the mitochondria, mild stress that promotes adaptation. So acting as a mitohormetic effector, hydrogen is actually transiently mild increase in oxidative stress and inflammation, in the tissues, which is exactly what exercise does, right? And other hormetic stressors, which triggers our body to respond. So you get a NRF2 response from that, and we produce more endogenous antioxidants like glutathione, catalase, superoxide dismutase. So hydrogen has shown to drive to redox homeostasis, which is critically important because you can take too many antioxidants. You can go into reductive stress, and reductive stress can be just as harmful as excess oxidative stress, right? The important is this harmony between these signaling stressors and our reductive molecules, our antioxidants. So hydrogen does this at the same time. So now it's improving the number and function of our mitochondria, mitochondrial biogenesis, better health of the mitochondria. We're getting more energy. It's regulating our epigenetics. So to date, hydrogen has showed to positively impact about 10,000 gene expressions. So it regulates our inflammatory response. So again, inflammation is not necessarily a bad thing. It's our body's defense mechanism. What's important is a proper inflammatory response. So you're not under-responding or over-responding or leading to chronic inflammation.
This year, actually achieve your New Year's resolutions. This is your year to look and feel younger, regain your energy, conquer your goals, and experience even better health. No matter what your goals are for 2025, this supplement called MitoPure, created by Timeline Nutrition, can help because it supports your health at a foundational level by encouraging cellular renewal of your mitochondria, which are the battery packs of your cells. MitoPure is a precise dose of a rare compound called urolithin A that helps your body clear out dysfunctional mitochondria and create new healthy ones, which gives you more energy, better workouts, and more endurance to achieve any goals you have this new year. MitoPure is the only urolithin A supplement on the market clinically proven to target the effects of age-related cellular decline and deliver increases in muscle strength and endurance without any change in exercise. The new year isn't just about a new you, it's about a renewed you. MitoPure promotes cellular renewal of your mitochondria, which will improve all aspects of your health. Timeline is offering 10% off your order of MitoPure. Go to timeline.com/FitFatherProject. That's timeline.com/FitFatherProject to learn more. I have a question on this. Knowing how the mitochondria produces energy in, the electron transport chain, it's building up a proton gradient. Does molecular hydrogen in the H2 gas format feed that in any direct way to help the cells produce more ATP, or is it working in these more indirect ways?
I think indirect. I think a lot of people will quote this, but I think it's hydrogen ions that do that.
It is hydrogen ions, and that's why I was wondering if it was the gas itself that would do that as well, but it is the hydrogen ions that build the proton gradient.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, hydrogen does this for other things like autophagy too. There's been some really interesting research. Hydrogen usually activates autophagy, but in a couple very unique models like drowning, resuscitation, and heart failure, hydrogen has actually inhibited autophagy when we absolutely don't want autophagy at the time. So these effects at increasing the number and function of our mitochondria to give more energy and affecting epigenetics seems to be like a supervisor going in and turning all the dials to get everything work how we're supposed to work before external stressors are coming in and knocking everything out of calibration. Then there's a couple other ways that hydrogen water specifically works.
Okay.
So hydrogen gas works in these ways, whether you're inhaling or drinking or how you're taking it. But hydrogen water specifically is getting into our gut and it's interacting with our microbiome. Mm-hmm. So there are quite a number of studies showing improvements in our microbiome from consuming specifically hydrogen water. Of course, inhaling, it's going into your lungs and then exhaling out. So very little is getting into your stomach.
Yeah.
Then hydrogen water is getting into our internal organs, many of them a lot better than inhaling, such as our liver. And we still don't understand what's going on here, but we have pharmacodynamic studies showing that hydrogen enters the liver and a portion of it doesn't come out. It's metabolized in a yet to be discovered method. Now, this is very curious because so far in the research, having a physiological effect in the liver is taking the highest dosage, right? So, perhaps 10 times higher than seeing the first physiological effect for exercise to see the first physiological response in the liver. So there's a number of mechanisms here. Now, all of them working together. For instance, with the tablets, we have 21 structure function claims, that are validated to FTC and FDA standards. So it's improving metabolic health, it's improving brain health and alertness after attention after sleep deprivation. We have improved some biomarkers, some phenotypic biomarkers, and actual functional outcomes in the elderly and aging. We've improved exercise performance and recovery and have a couple of new clinical trials that are underway. We've shown, I think, body composition improvements in 7 clinical trials now. We reduced calprotectin in the gut. We improved short-chain fatty acids. We regulated ghrelin. So these are some of the ways that we could be improving, metabolism and improving body comp. So a lot of people think of ghrelin as a hunger hormone, but it's not that simple, right? We actually want ghrelin, and ghrelin has more functions.
Growth hormone functions.
It has neurological benefits. It regulates our blood glucose levels, right? So ghrelin is very important. And in healthy people, ghrelin spikes when you're hungry and plummets right after eating. In overweight or obese people, it kind of just stays static and doesn't move. So they just kind of nibble and snack all day long. So in a clinical trial on overweight people, we properly regulated the ghrelin to function again. And, now we're showing this in mice, and we have a couple clinical trials that we're hoping to see the same thing. But in mice, we regulated GLP-1. Right. So again, the same thing but reverse. When you're fasting, GLP-1 should be low, and then after eating, it should go high. Right. And it gets dysregulated in obese people. And now, like tirzepatide and semaglutide, they just kind of throttle it all the time.
For sure.
Which might make you not eat protein and fruits and vegetables and things like that.
And this is fascinating too, because I'm sure knowing like a lot of the GLP-1 action is happening from the vagus nerve in the GI tract. It's the drinking of the hydrogen water that's leading to these effects. The inhalation probably wouldn't, correct?
Yes, exactly. Right. So the drinking would, and there's some reasons that we think it might. For instance, in our study on the overweight, where we affected ghrelin and short chain fatty acids, so we increased butyrate and propionate.
Nice.
Right? So we're thinking that perhaps this is driving the GLP-1 and that we're creating more akkermansia. And there are rodent studies showing an increase in akkermansia from drinking hydrogen water. So that is a clinical trial that we have that's actually under data review right now. So I spoke to the corresponding author, super confidential, on the data. But there's some good signs on some of the things that they're showing early on in reviewing. So none of the p-values are done. It's not through peer review, but they're looking at the data and they're like, this is going to be significant in a few areas.
Cool.
I'm excited for this one to come out.
I want to pause for a second and maybe restate some of the benefits in a simple way so people can track. It's wide ranging. When you consume molecular hydrogen, and I'll speak in the drinking form, you're gut microbiome and many parameters related to that are going to improve. You have a healthier gut. You're making secondary compounds from that. Your hunger regulation can improve, especially if you're overweight and there's dysregulation there. You're generally producing more energy. There are markers of aging like telomere length that are improving. Your brain is getting more energy. There's some cool stuff happening in the liver that we don't quite understand. There is just like whole body systemic improvements. Seems like a lot of digestive focus, also regulating inflammation and the genes associated with that. And it's poetic too, because like this is like the foundational element. It's the most abundant element in the entire universe. And it seems that when it gets in our bodies, like good stuff happens all over the place.
Yeah, I think there's a quote, right, that, because hydrogen spawned everything in our universe.
Yeah.
Right. And I think there's a quote, I forget who it's by, but it said, if God did create the universe with a word, it wouldn't have been let there be light. It would have been hydrogen. Right. Let there be hydrogen. So.
That's really cool. Now I think where most people are probably going to get exposed to hydrogen is going to be a lot of these products marketed on social media, like these hydrogen water bottles, which are basically like little water bottles that have these electrolysis units that split, and create hydrogen gas in there. Can you talk about those and how it's different from what you've created and what Drink HRW does with the tablets?
Yeah, sure. So to start off, the bottles will range widely, in how they perform, right? Some of them deliver almost no hydrogen. The best of them are getting 4.5 to 5 parts per million when they're brand new.
Mm-hmm.
So this is in 250 milliliters of water, meaning that they're getting between, 1.125 and 1.25 milligrams of hydrogen as a dosage, right? And the dosage in a short order is actually what is most important. A higher concentration helps us get that higher dosage. Now, with the tablets, we are producing a little over 12 parts per million in 500 milliliters of water that you can drink down quickly. So you're actually getting over 6 milligrams of hydrogen. So 5 or 6 times more H2 than the best performing bottles of these, which is very important because as hydrogen's passing through our system, the higher the dose, the more tissues it's getting into.
Right.
So the more of a systemic effect it has rather than a localized effect. Now, the issue with the bottles, the best bottles, how they operate is under something called Henry's law. They're using pressure to force more gas into the water because the saturation point of hydrogen is 1.6 parts per million at SATP. So to get to this 5 parts per million, you're needing to get 50, 60 psi of pressure and time to hit an equilibrium. Well, when you are getting up to 50, 60 psi over and over again, this is like hitting a table with a hammer over and over again. So even if their gasket is designed to handle the 50, 60 psi of pressure, and many of them are only designed to handle like 30 or 40 psi of pressure, so they start breaking after sometimes one use, but it's much different to hold something under pressure than to have it spike in pressure over and over again.
Yeah.
So these machines tend to start leaking, sometimes in a few weeks, sometimes in a month or two, and you don't really know what the hydrogen is as it starts leaking more and more.
Right.
And it'll scale down, and you might have been at 5 when it was brand new, and it might get down to 0.6, 0.7 parts per million within a few weeks or a few months. And now you're not even getting the minimum threshold for physiological effect. When it gets
Which is what would be the stated minimum physiologic threshold?
Probably the minimum physiological threshold that we'll see benefits in the gut, just localized to the gut, is about 0.5 milligrams.
Okay.
Right. Now we start seeing benefits for, say, exercise, and again, the benefits get better and better as the dose gets higher. There's a dose dependent response. For exercise, we start seeing it around 1 milligram. So again, these bottles, having one is enough to start seeing some mild benefits for exercise when they're brand new. But for the liver, when we're extrapolating research from rodents, and translating it into the dose per, body mass, and based on consumption for humans, we need probably 10 milligrams to start seeing a benefit in the liver. right? So this is where it gets really important. When you scale up the dose, it's critically important because it's affecting more issues. It's getting into more tissues. It's having more of a systemic effect. And our antioxidant systems and inflammatory systems are localized, right? When they're too high throttled, they end up being chronic in circulation, but they start out localized. So the more tissues you're getting the hydrogen to, the more it's regulating in your whole body. So that's why dose is critically important. Now, some other issues with the bottles, and there isn't much definitive proof, but I know a number of people have been stating concerns which have been growing about microplastics, from the bottles, about PFASs, in the water. So I think more research is needed. And it's also important to understand that, say, with the hydrogen tablets, we have new dietary ingredient status with the FDA. We have GRAS status. Every batch is manufactured in a GMP facility in the USA that undergoes California Prop 65 standards, the strictest in the world. As a consumer device, and all these bottles are coming primarily from China, they don't actually have to do any testing, right? So we don't know what we're getting.
I've also heard about potential risks of ultimately heavy metals in the water from the electrodes over time with some of those bottles as well.
The metal degradation over time in the electrodes. So people have brought up those concerns. Again, I can't definitively state it's doing any of these things because researchers need to do studies and publish it and show this is what's happening. But enough researchers have brought up these concerns that I think it's worth noting that people should be cautious.
My personal experience over this last year using hydrogen is I looked into enough of the research, probably a lot of stuff that you helped fund and get out there, ironically. And I was sold. This has the mechanisms, it works. So I bought one of the more, I would say the more expensive on at least Amazon, $300-400 machines. And they certainly have multi-$1,000 machines that are much better. But I bought one of those and I started comparing it in hydrogen testing at home to the amount ppm concentration to the tablets. And in the new units, I was getting about, of the machines, I was getting about 3 to 4 ppm, which I was like, oh, damn, that's pretty good. Because I even had a bottle that was less than 1 ppm, but the tablets are just far superior. And when you get into the really expensive units, they have ones that people are charging $10,000 for. The cost efficacy, and they're only generating maybe in the parts per billion, not even in the parts per million in some cases. The cost efficacy is you could be buying these hydrogen water tablets for the next 10 years and get a higher dose, and it would be cheaper than buying these expensive machines.
Yeah, you buy them for 10 years and you're also getting 100 times a dose.
Yeah, so I was trying to say, it's with the dosage, you just get you get actual, and it's super convenient too. Easy to have a ritual of just dropping one of the hydrogen tablets in morning water. So a couple specifics, if someone could imagine and visualize the routine. These are pressed tablets that come in a little bit of a sleeve. And what do you do with them? When do you recommend people take them? How much water should they mix it in? What does it actually look like to use hydrogen?
On an empty stomach is best. So I like first thing in the morning or right before I work out. I also will recommend to some people mid-afternoon if you have a lull. A lot of people say, especially working in an office with, all of the fluorescent lights going on and everything, they'll get that fatigue, that exhaustion, near the end of the workday. So that's a good time to take it as well. So you don't want to eat it, take it in conjunction with eating. You can take it right before you eat and eat 5 minutes later, but don't take it right after you eat, because if you're already eating and getting some fiber, you want to utilize that hydrogen that you're producing. But additionally, in a coincidence, fiber actually retains hydrogen gas and it turns into foams and gels.
I can see that.
So,
yeah.
It enters. I actually have some patents on this to make lotions and foams and gels out of it, but that means it's not actually getting into your system. It's stabilizing and you might pee it out, right? Rather than get it. So empty stomach, the tablet was designed to dissolve in room temperature water. Now this is important because heat is a catalyst in the reaction. So we could make it dissolve in cold water, but people can't chug cold water. And you want to chug this down as fast as you can, right? So we designed it for room temp water because that is what we can consume rapidly the most easily.
And so how much water, like in a glass, is it 500 milliliters?
Optimal is 500 milliliters, but we have research at 330. We have research at 250. At the end of the day, the right volume of water is what you can rapidly consume.
Yep.
So I actually add a few tablets to 1 liter because I can chug 1 liter first thing in the morning, no problem without taking a breath.
Yeah.
Now, an elderly person might struggle at even 330, so 250 might be best for them.
Cool. That's really interesting. Is there any effect? I mean, I know hydrogen's so small, like it can basically, escape through anything. But is there any point of like throwing a plate or a cover on top as it's doing its dissolving?
Actually, when I talked about how the pressurization works, the 1.6 ppm at maximum saturation at SATP, I should have gotten into the basis of my patent and how the tablets work. So we discovered a pretty cool effect that was happening and how to do it. So basically, there's two ways to get a higher concentration in water. The one is the under pressure and time, and the other is to make very small nanobubbles. Right? So when you make these very small nanobubbles, they're resistant to dissipating. Right? They create pockets of internal pressure within the water, and it increases their zeta potential, which repels them and resists coalescence.
Yeah.
So altogether, this actually drives more hydrogen into the water. So you might get, even 2.5 to 3 parts per million of dissolved hydrogen under SATP while the cloud of water is going on. Like the nanobubbles are in there because of the internal pressure. But these bubbles are then stabilized and they're not dissipating. So they're quasi-dissolved. So it gives you enough time to chug it down and get it into your system to start circulating.
So basically, when this reaction, I'm watching I popped my hydrogen tablet into some water, maybe 500 milliliters, and I'm watching it happen. Like I'm watching visually, I see bubbling happening. I see some stuff forming on the surface, in the magnesium reaction. And then the second I see motion is done, is that when I just tip it back and chug it?
As soon as it pops to the surface and you see it start breaking it apart, you just want to slam that down as fast as you can. This is not something you want to sip on, right? Now, think of hydrogen because it is hormesis, right? Like exercise.
Yeah.
Chugging it down is like doing a hard workout,
right?
Right? You just did that stress. You're flooding your system with the H2 gas. If you sip on it, that's like doing one bicep curl every 30 minutes.
Totally.
Right? You're not going to get the hormetic response.
Yeah, I think that's it's a subtle and powerful point I want people to pick up. Like with exercise, you want a very discrete dose and then allow the body to get into recovery. And I think the problem with these hydrogen bottles I see is people are just sipping on them all day. It's just low dose. It's not
so
effective.
Many of the manufacturers, they don't understand the science. They've done no research, right? Like, I'm not an academic, but I've published, I think, 17 or 18 papers now, right, through peer review on the subject. And I keep myself as up to date as I can. And I speak to professors all around the world every day to get better insights, right, on how the science works. Most of the companies selling it are just marketers. They don't have a scientist on their team. They don't even have a doctor on their team. They read what another marketer says and they copy it and go and say.
Well, ultimately, what is funny is anyone online who is selling hydrogen tablets, and there's many different companies. I mean, we like Drink HRW, a company that you've been associated with, and you're on the scientific advisory board. They're ultimately using your tablets, which is cool. So if you're getting hydrogen tablets, you're getting the good stuff. So that's really cool.
There are some fake products from China on Alibaba. So every month, another one or two fake brands pops up. And the challenge is they make all the same claims. They claim that they're doing what mine. They claim to be mine, but they're not. You drop it in water and they actually don't even do anything. They don't even dissolve. So that is a challenge, and it's tough to take these guys down because I could go after them for patent infringement.
But it's global stuff. I mean, you got to go to like whatever country they're in, figure that all out. That's a lot.
I'd have to go after the distributors that hit here.
Yeah.
And usually they're like one-man operations that have cheaped out and bought off Alibaba in China. And it's like, do I really want to spend 10 or 20 grand on a retainer to sue this guy who spent $500 to put some stuff on it?
Right. Okay. So I was thinking too, like this would stack really well during fasting times. If someone's doing some intermittent fasting or doing like longer fasts, like it'd be kind of cool to pulse hydrogen a few times per day that could have some pretty powerful effects. Have you thought through that? Have you played around with protocols like that?
Yeah, I mean, I have, and I need to get back into fasting. It actually used to be part of my protocol,
Mm-hmm.
but with the travel, like I'm up to over 100 days a year now traveling. I've kind of lost that in my routine.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I've played around with it. I find it is really beneficial, and there is some interesting research, like um, in fasting fruit flies,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like fruit flies that they give no fuel to, hydrogen extends their lifespan before they
Mm-hmm.
die, so they live
Mm-hmm.
significantly longer.
Mm-hmm. Cool. All right. So we're here now, we're recording this at the end of 2024. Like, what do you see? Where is hydrogen at by like 2030? Like, what's the market? What's the science? What are the devices? What advancements do you see happening in the space? What's the consumer awareness around hydrogen? How many people are using it? Like, what does the future look like in your opinion?
So, in my opinion, and it's interesting because I also just asked my personal chat GPT this literally yesterday. So, in my opinion, we've hit our first critical mass.
Okay.
Most people are aware that hydrogen in water exists.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know what it does for them or really what it is, but they've heard about it, right? And a few years ago, that was maybe 1 in 100 people. Now it's maybe 4 in 5
Mm-hmm.
have actually like heard about the concept. I think in 2034, by 2034, we're going to hit our first critical or second critical mass in that the general public will know it's good for them, and
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be ubiquitous, like a vitamin C or a creatine or something
Mm-hmm.
that is absolutely everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in going more into the validation point and being accepted as like serious, you know, science-based medicine. I know I asked this chat GPT literally yesterday evening, and it thinks there's about a 60% chance for about 10 different areas that hydrogen water or hydrogen inhalation will be accepted in the medical community by 2034. But when it scales up by 2054, it gives a 95 or more percent chance that by
Mm-hmm.
2054 it'll be accepted in the medical community.
Cool. I mean, really cool. And even beautiful. Like, I'm a naturopathic physician, so I'm trained in natural ways. And I think there's nothing more fundamental than the base of the periodic table in helping improve human health and the fact that it's a postbiotic. So, like, I love this. Very, very exciting. Now, let's talk about inhalation. I know you're also working on, different routes of delivering hydrogen. Like, what do you see? Like, you're making your own device. We chatted about this before the podcast that, will give people the ability to inhale hydrogen. What is going to be the expected benefit of that over people taking the oral? Like, what are the gains, and why not just continue with the oral hydrogen tabs until the end of time?
Yeah, so I'll start for why I'm developing this machine, because there are machines on the market currently, but none are both safe and effective, right? So the machines that are potentially effective are an explosion risk.
Mm-hmm.
Hydrogen is explosive between 4% to 75%, right, of the air. Now, think the Hindenburg blowing up,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's hydrogen gas. So the machines that are effective are some of them that are either producing hydroxy, so 66% H2, 33% oxygen, which is immediately explosive. And
Mm-hmm.
I actually know a researcher that one exploded on, and there's publications detailing all the times they've exploded on people, or that are producing 99% hydrogen gas. Now, these manufacturers argue that they're not explosive because they're at pure hydrogen, right? But it's through a nasal cannula, and we
Mm-hmm.
only inhale 18 of every 60 seconds. That means 70% of the time, these other 42 seconds, the hydrogen comes out your mouth,
Yeah.
right? Making the air around your head an explosive mixture,
Mm-hmm.
right? So for these reasons, this is why hydrogen inhalation for the clinical trials, they are almost exclusively in China. It's the only place where they're getting ethics approval to do this research. In the trials in Europe and North America, they've actually had to fill gas containers, secure them in hospitals, and go through these whole procedures, to get a proper flow and get it tested. Now, on the flip side, there's machines out of Japan which are safe but ineffective
Mm-hmm.
because they're delivering 4% hydrogen gas, but only 1 or 2 liter a minute flow rate through a nasal cannula. So we breathe 6 to 8 liters per minute at rest, up to 10 liters a minute for a bigger person. If you're only getting 1 or 2 liters a minute and you're only getting 30% of that because it's nasal cannula, you're getting a fraction of this 4% gas, which we know is effective in rodents. So I've spent the last 7 years working with one of the top researchers in the field to develop this machine, and various engineers in the field, and talking back and forth with various researchers looking for a machine like this. We ended up figuring out how to make a machine that delivers up to 10 liters a minute, 4% hydrogen gas through a rebreathing mask. Now, this is important because just doing a straight flow, you're going to need 60 liters a minute, right? And that's not practical from a cost standpoint, and it's going to be very uncomfortable pounding on your face. So we figured out that this cool innovation, this patent pending our system anyways, where it mixes inside the machine and inflates an inflatable bag as a reserve tank. So when you inhale, it opens a one-way valve. You inhale 100% of your air as this 4% hydrogen gas mixture, and then you exhale the CO2 out another one-way valve. So we intend to launch this at the Health Optimization Summit in Austin, Texas in the middle of April.
Nice. And okay, so like this goes great. Like, do we expect just like much higher blood levels of hydrogen than if the tablets?
I answered. I went off on the first question and forgot the second. So the pharmacokinetics are a bit different between hydrogen water and hydrogen inhalation. So when we've done studies, we've seen that hydrogen water is better at saturating certain tissues like our liver, getting into our gut, and certain internal organs. Inhalation obviously gets much better into our lungs.
Yeah, lungs and heart probably. Yeah.
But also our muscles, right? Inhalation is raising higher. Now it's interesting because inhalation gets a bit higher than hydrogen water in the brain, but then hydrogen water has all the secondary messengers from the gut to the brain. So, we're going to have to try and separate which mechanisms are promoting the neurological benefits. But I see a future where we are using both.
Yeah, I can see that.
Because they're getting to different tissues. So you're going to want to inhale and then you're going to want to drink.
Yeah, I could see drinking hydrogen water in the morning, inhaling either pre-workout or post-workout perhaps, and there's some kind of dance like that.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, to end this, Drink HRW is a brand that you founded and you're on the scientific advisory board for now. They have products that are, super well vetted for longevity. One product of theirs that they are excited about is Prime, which has something called GAA, which is a new compound I actually don't know about. It might not be new, but it's something that helps with creatine. Can you speak into this, well, I guess Prime as a particular product and GAA and how that's good for people who want, muscle mass with longevity, and especially men over 40, like who we serve here at Fit Father?
100%, right? And to add to what you said, when I exited Drink HRW's leadership, right, and divested out of the company because it was a conflict, to call me their founder, and stay on as an advisor, they gave me veto rights. So they cannot launch a product that I don't sign off on, right? And they can't change products after I've signed off on. And at this time, they set up a scientific advisory board with multiple, doctors and PhDs that help develop the products alongside me. So Prime is one of my favorite. And GAA is really cool. So it's actually a precursor to creatine. It converts to creatine within our body. Now, this is critically important because creatine can't get to our brain. This is why in the 90s and early 2000s, we had massive multi-center phase 3 trials underway looking at creatine monohydrate for various central nervous system diseases, which are all characterized by low levels of creatine in the brain. They all got stopped because the creatine wasn't actually raising in the brain. It wasn't getting there. So GAA will get to the brain, and there's publications showing that it's raising brain creatine levels, but also that it's raising creatine levels in the muscles better. And there's other research showing that it actually isn't leading to water retention. So it's great for people who don't want to, load and gain extra weight by taking creatine. So it's a really cool compound. Now, we've known about GAA since like the 1950s. We've been using it since then for livestock and chickens to put on mass. The reason it was never used in humans is because it sees a rise in homocysteine. Right? Now, the recent research has combined GAA and creatine monohydrate, and creatine monohydrate lowers homocysteine. So they've been finding no raise in homocysteine doing them together. Now, to be safe,
I saw you added betaine in there.
Yeah, betaine anhydrous. So
betaine,
which is also trimethylglycine.
Yeah.
So that has the amount we added has a significantly stronger homocysteine lowering effect than the GAA has a raising effect, and the creatine lowering effect is roughly on par with the GAA raising. So the DrinkHRW Scientific Advisory Board and myself, we created this product to ensure we're getting all the benefits of the GAA and actually lowering homocysteine rather than raising it.
That's exciting. Now GAA is on my radar. And it's cool to know those things combine so well with some other good compounds. And so DrinkHRW is a company that has the fine molecular hydrogen tablets we're talking about, along with a whole bunch of other longevity supplements. So if you're listening to this and you're interested in trying hydrogen water tablets as well as checking out other supplements, there's going to be links in the show notes on our blog if you're listening or watching us there, or if on YouTube below in the description where you can check that stuff out. And Alex, thank you. I'm really excited for all that you have experienced and accomplished so far, and also the future of this. I'm taking hydrogen tablets. I took some this afternoon for a little pick me up, before we had this interview. So, I'm on board. You have another convert, and I'm grateful to be using this platform to make more people aware of these biohacks and new things we can do to enhance our health, our longevity, our cognition on a fundamental level.
Absolutely. And I'm on board with you. I'm excited that my do-it-yourself project to try and solve my own health issues is having a profound effect on the world.
Yeah.
That's something that, helps me get up every day and be motivated and have purpose and passion to keep going day after day.
I love it. Thanks for your time today, Alex. We appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Fit Father Project podcast. If you love what you heard, please rate and review our podcast on Apple Podcasts. It really helps spread this show to more men who need this valuable info. To watch full video episodes of this podcast and other motivational videos to inspire your training and more, visit our Fit Father Project YouTube channel. It's free and everything's made for busy guys over 40 like you. Visit youtube.com/Fit Father Project to get access to our entire video library. And finally, if you or someone in your life is interested in becoming a fit father or needs help losing weight, building muscle, and living healthier after age 40, then visit fitfatherproject.com, where you can see our proven programs, supplement line for guys 40 plus, and free meal plan and workouts to get you started. This is Dr. Anthony Balduzzi signing off. I'll see you in the next episode.